Hey folks, this is Riker with a Path of Exile video on the best starter builds for the upcoming expansion, Crucible. I coordinated with the Path of Exile experts Palsteron and Crouching Tuna from the Max Roll team to come up with a list of 5 excellent builds to start the new league with. These are builds that will not require you to get a ton of lucky drops or do a lot of trading to get a bunch of gear. They'll scale well with the content, get you easily through the campaign and well into the endgame content, but in the far endgame they will be superseded by the best builds. But you can use these to farm up all the gear and trade currency that you need to transition into one of the best builds. And you can find guides to these endgame best builds as well on maxroll.gg. Now we're going to note right off the bat that in the Crucible expansion, all builds are getting massively buffed thanks to the Crucible League mechanic, which basically gives your weapons passive skill trees to boost your power. In the description, we'll also provide you folks with links to build guides on all these starter builds created by a variety of great Path of Exile content creators, many of whom are on the Max Roll team. We'll also make a quick note that we're not ascribing ownership of any of these builds to any individual creator. There's been a lot of different versions of a lot of these different builds. These versions get modified and they reemerge over the years, so we're just forwarding you to guides on these builds. And as always, you can find timestamps in the description to skip ahead to different builds in this video. But before we dive in, a quick word from this video's sponsor, GNC. For Path of Exile's Crucible expansion, GNC is partnering with Max Roll's PoE team, because while Max Roll focuses on bringing you guides and tips on how to do your best in-game, you won't be able to do your best if your body and your mind is tired and sluggish, and that's where GNC comes in. They want to help bring nutritious snacks and supplements to gamers so that while you're juicing up your maps, you're also juicing up your brain and body to get the energy and focus that you need to blast long gaming sessions at peak performance while also taking care of your physical and mental health. And what I love most about GNC is that they spend hours and hours reading scientific papers before formulating their recipes to ensure every ingredient is deterministically crafted into their recipe. They don't just close their eyes and slam chemicals. And while GNC has a ton of products, here's 7 products handpicked as a sort of gamer starter pack. The Amplified Focus supplement has caffeine and other brain boosters to fuel mental clarity. Their layered protein bars make for healthy and delicious snacks while gaming. I actually made a tier list of their protein bars. Their lutein supplements help with eye health since we're staring at screens for hours. And if your sleep schedule gets messed up and you have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, their Tri-Sleep caplets will help you out. If you want a complete daily multivitamin regimen, they have their VitaPack program. And then to help with exercise, they have their Lit on-the-go energy drink to give you a nice energy and endurance buff. And after your workout, the protein blend makes for a great recovery drink to feed those tired muscles. And GNC has even more gamer-specific products launching soon as well. So if you want to pick up any GNC products, scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the description and use code Riker15 to get a discount on any single item. Alright, now without further ado, our top 5 list. Starting with our first build, the Cold DoT Elementalist. That's DoT as in damage over time. This build uses a wide array of cold skills to stack a bunch of different damage over time effects, leading to massive damage. You even have some flexibility to choose what cold skills you want to use, though there's definitely some optimal recommended setups. This build is a great all-rounder that scales well without the need for high-end gear. It applies massive crowd control, slowing enemies, which really helps in boss fights. To run this build, you start by picking the Witch class, which is the basic spellcaster. And then you take the Elementalist Ascendancy, which specializes in inflicting elemental ailments and increases your area of effects. 2 things that'll be very useful for us. You technically don't need to pick the Elementalist to run this build, but with Elementalist, this is the best setup for mapping. One of the spicier cold skills you can pick is Vol Cold Snap. This activates a cold aura around you, letting you just shield charge your way through a map while killing everything along the way. Now, one thing to bear in mind with this build, however, is that it can be really button intensive. You're using many different skills, and that means you're pressing a lot of buttons really often. But hey, that's a positive for some people. Tripolar Bear has a guide to this build on Max Roll, link in the description below. On to build number 2, Pohx's Righteous Fire Juggernaut. Righteous Fire is a spell that sets yourself on fire.
Ooh, that's bad.
But it also sets nearby enemies on fire.
That's good.
The fire hurts you too, though.
That's bad.
However, the fire damage scales based on your life and energy shield.
That's good.
However, that's just going to increase the amount of fire damage that you take.
That's bad.
Can I go now?
But thankfully, it's also your enemies taking that increased fire damage based on your amount of life and energy shield. So what you're really going to want to stack to keep yourself alive then is maximum fire resistance and life regen. Oh, and on top of everything, while you have Righteous Fire activated, your spell damage is increased. Now, since it burns enemies around you, Righteous Fire is great at dealing area damage, but it is weak against single targets. So to compensate, you want to work Fire Trap into the build, which lets you throw exploding traps that leave burning patches on the ground. To run this build, you start by taking the Marauder class, which is a strength-based warrior class, similar to a barbarian. Then you take the Juggernaut Ascendancy, which focuses on enhancing your armor and your ability to not die. This build is really popular for its ability to effortlessly clear maps. You basically just activate Righteous Fire once at the start of the map, and then you run around with shield charge and everything just burns to death. It's also great at staying alive thanks to all the defenses and life recovery that you're stacking. However, because of its weak single target ability compared to some of the other builds on this list, killing bosses will take a while with this build until you're well geared, but you got the tankiness to outlast them. This build has recently gotten a huge buff and is now able to level way smoother than it used to, making it a great contender for League Start. The creator of the build, Pohx, is highly regarded as the expert on Righteous Fire. It's been his main build for years, and he's created multiple guides and even a wiki on the skill that addresses all the skill's mechanics. Link to his guide in the video description. Then on to build number 3, Impending Doom. This right here is a boom boom build. Why? Impending Doom is a support skill that supports Hex curses. When a curse expires, it triggers a chaos explosion in a nice area around the cursed target. But you'll be forcing curses to end prematurely. That's because there's a limit to how many curses you can have on an enemy, and when you exceed that limit by applying another curse, you cause the oldest curse to expire, thus triggering the boom. To run this build, you start with the Witch class, then you move into the Occultist Ascendancy, which draws from the Profane to wield curses, cold, and chaos damage. And the Occultist has a power called Profane Bloom, which makes it so that enemies who are killed while cursed explode in a burst of chaos damage. So you're causing explosions to trigger more explosions. Boom boom, baby. With this build, you can swiftly move from enemy back to enemy back with shield charge, which makes this an excellent mapping build. It's also viable for dealing with any of the endgame bosses, so if you're looking for a build that can handle all the content in the game, this is a great choice. However, leveling can be annoying with this build. You'll actually need to transition between builds twice during your leveling process. Thankfully though, Maxroll's Pro Racer Tai has a very detailed step-by-step campaign walkthrough. He's writing the leveling section for every Maxroll guide. So check out the full Maxroll guide for this build written by Crouching Tuna, link in the description. On to build number 4, Toxic Rain. Toxic Rain. If you want to rain chaos down on your enemies, this is the build for you. Toxic Rain is a skill that shoots arrows up into the air, and then they rain down as chaos damage pods that explode on enemies. These pods linger for a while, so you can stack them in order to deal massive boss damage. This build is a great all-rounder. To run it, you start with the Agile Ranger class, and then you move into the Pathfinder Ascendancy class, whose focus is on enhancing your flasks. It'll turn your life flask into a massive life regeneration buff, and drastically increase the effect of your defensive flasks, which can be really impressive with certain unique flasks. Now, there are two main ways to run the Toxic Rain build. Palsteron's version focuses on ballistas, letting you get up to 6 of these bad boys, launching enough toxic rains to blot out the sun. While Zizzarin's self-cast version means you're the one launching these poison clouds yourself. The difference is mostly the playstyle, since no matter which version you choose, you'll have solid defensive options. One downside of this build, however, visual clutter. All the chaos pods on the ground can make it difficult to see enemy ground effects. We'll link to guides from both Palsteron and Zizzarin in the description. And lastly, on to build number 5, the Boneshatter Slayer. This build revolves around the Boneshatter skill, a melee attack that hits enemies so hard that some of that damage splashes back onto you. And if you stun an enemy with this attack, a damaging pulse will shoot out, dealing area damage to monsters around you. You see, every time you hit an enemy with Boneshatter, you gain a stack of trauma. While each stack of trauma that you have gives you a small damage buff, every stack also deals physical damage to yourself. This means you want to focus on things that reduce the physical damage that you take, like armor, And you also want to stack life recovery to counteract the damage you're inflicting upon yourself. This build has a fast, visceral, and exciting melee playstyle, and it's basically an all-you-can-eat buffet of pain. How many trauma stacks can you handle? To run this build, you start off by picking the Duelist, which is a hybrid strength and dexterity class that is great at both dealing and avoiding damage. Then you take the Slayer Ascendancy class, which zeroes in on the offensive side of things, while also giving you access to a lot of life leech. So much life leech that you can actually leech beyond your max life, allowing you to continue recovering life even once you stop attacking enemies. The Boneshatter Slayer is fantastic at running maps and is the best build for melee players this patch. However, the build isn't great against bosses, starting to be a common trend here. You can tank through the boss fights, but it'll take a while to whittle them down. The Racer Karn, known for playing Boneshatter, just came out with an in-depth video about this build recently. Alternatively, if you want to check out the guide on max roll, try Polar Bear, brought it there with a written guide as well. That covers our top 5 list here, but these are just some of the ideas to get you started. There are many more awesome builds and build creators out there. These are just the team's picks. Do sound off in the comments with your theory crafting. Otherwise, with what starter build you'll be going with this league, because that's going to wrap up this video. But do visit maxroll.gg as an excellent resource for getting started in the new expansion. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more ARPG content.